Smile, everyone's on candid camera now. You're being recorded. Well, welcome back to most of you, and welcome to some of you who were unable to join us last time. We're so excited that you're able to join us live today. A big shout out to those who I know can't make it live, including some of our international colleagues for whom this is the middle of the night for them. And so we're appreciative of their participation and understand that the timing does not work well for everybody, but that's why we're recording and going to post it and make it available for everyone. We'd love it if you wanted to just say hi in the chat. I know many of you have introduced yourselves on the community, which is fantastic. If you want to say hi in the chat and, to each other, that's great. Feel free to use the chat throughout this with any questions or comments you have. And as we progress, we're hoping to have some time, certainly at the end, for any questions with anyone. We are happy to stay after the hour and continue to answer any questions or have a dialogue with anyone, but we will endeavor to cut off the official recording at an hour and let people go who have other things that they wish to do today. So welcome, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Next slide. So I just wanted to kind of start with kind of reviewing a timeline. This has been, it's posted on the website. It's something that's kind of been throughout. We did the kickoff in December, but in a lot of ways, I know that many of you now begins the real start for many of the challenges with your students. And so you'll see the many dates there along the way. The webinars are all for the educators and teachers and adults who are helping to support students in the challenge. And then we're leading up to the really important big deadline from our perspective, is that May 1st pitch deadline. We'll continue to talk about that over time, but it's flexible within your classrooms and within your groups as to when and how long you decide to have each phase work with your student teams. We've structured this ideally to hopefully make it a little bit ahead for you, as so you get the information and can prepare in advance of when students will go through the phase and engage with each other, ask questions. It all kind of leads up, though. The official deadline will be the recorded video pitches will need to be submitted to us by May 1st, and we'll have a form and more information as we proceed through the months to get there. But that's really the key piece, and then we'll announce the official winners on May 19th. Next slide. So we talked about this a little last time. I'm not going to rehash it completely, but I do want to kind of, as we talk about the components of the work that we're doing, we are leveraging Packful, which is the curriculum and technology app that we've created throughout this process. You will find it's a little different than other ed tech tools intentionally, in that we do support nonlinear learning. You may choose, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, you may be choosing to go through the process a little bit in a linear way in your classrooms, and that's totally okay. But the platform is also designed to support that nonlinear aspect if students or users wanted to bounce around. The curriculum is there for your needs, and we're looking really for students to work in teams, and then also to have some choice. Student choice and student selection is really key to the type of work that we believe in, and we're hoping that you're supporting them in that effort. And then you'll find feedback loops inside of Packful. And no grading. And I know some of you may be tweaking that to do grading in your classrooms. That's totally fine and up to you, but we've intentionally made this so that the app doesn't do that, because this whole process of authentic learning is, we intentionally did it this way. And hopefully that is something that resonates with many of you. And you'll find a way to work it into your classrooms however best fits. So next. High-level requirements. This was a more detailed slide last time, but I wanted to reiterate a couple key points for educators and students. So specifically for educators, one of the requirements is you're asking you to use Packful to track student team progress and to provide feedback. So students will work in teams. They will work on activities and then submit them to you through the Packful app. And then you, as the educator, will then check in on their work and provide feedback to them, and therefore create the loop. And then ultimately, and this is important particularly now as many of you are probably getting ready to start with students very soon here, we would encourage you as much as possible to support diversity in race and gender in your student teams. That's something that we've also added to the curriculum and content, particularly something that's important to us at the university. It underpins a lot of our work, but we've recently added some content specific to that to also let students understand the importance of diverse voices in their teams and how that can really benefit them. So that's something that we would encourage you to consider. And I know in some cases you've pre-selected teams and there may be great reasons for all that. So, but just something to think about as you proceed. So using Packful, students are first introduced to the innovator's mindset in the innovator's guide and the 17 global goals. And you could call them sustainable development goals, the global goals. You'll find in Packful, we've chosen to almost as consistently as possible, always refer to them as global goals, but there are lots of SDGs, there's lots of phrases or words for them. So students form teams, as we've talked about, and then as they get started, the hope is that they will identify a local or global problem that has some relevance to them as a team. And then they just get started with their projects. So, and I'll walk you through that in the demo here shortly, but they'll walk through the 3 phases of design thinking in order to develop solutions. So it's okay. We've gotten this question in the community. It's okay if they pick big, lofty problems to start with. The hope is that as they go through the curricular content, they help to frame the problem, they help to understand how it impacts people, and there's a natural narrowing process that underpins the actual work. So it's worth mentioning that the global goals were created by, world leaders to address all kinds of social, physical, environmental issues, and they include problems that are small and ones that are huge. And so we believe that by addressing these goals, that students can engage with their communities and make a big difference. And so when they're using Packful, students will ultimately choose a single goal that represents the problem they're identifying, but it's okay because that can be changed at any point. So they're not stuck with that, but they can get started, and there's lots of information to be learned about the goals. And then, and if you allow students to choose their own goals, there are some helpful documents in the Innovator's Guide, including in the, and I'll show you that after a little while, that may help them understand how to take their big global goal and break it down into smaller target areas. But if this is your first time, I wouldn't get too worried. Just kind of let the process flow a little bit, let them choose something, and then it'll work itself out as they progress, and you can help them with that process. And that's really, from our perspective, where the meat of the learning and the experience happens. And really this is kind of just reiterating, we'll talk about the Innovator's Guide and I'll go through it a little bit more in detail.
Now, many of you are teaching remotely now, and so we feel like it's important to share with you that with some of the solutions that your students may come up with, some of them could be virtual. Now, that was an option before, but a lot of students chose to create actual prototypes of their solutions in the classroom. But since, many of them are home now, we just wanted to just kind of give you an idea, just have like the end in mind, like the end goal for your students, what they could just begin to think about. And so we wanted to share with you some examples of some virtual solutions that we've either seen in the past or something that they could think about doing for now. For example, they could consider doing a plan, creating a plan. Last year, with some of the challenge projects that we received, some students did come up with a plan, such as a fundraiser, or they could even consider creating a petition to address some of the problems or, a specific global goal. And actually, I found some helpful resources for you teachers that you could use. And I'll make sure that following the webinar, I posted in the Packful community so you can access it. But there were a couple of lesson plans created by educators on how to create a fundraiser, how to create a petition that you may find to be helpful. Another idea is creating an app mock-up. Last year we saw that as well. Some students designed some wonderful apps to address their particular global goal. And so you can have them create a mock-up where they're actually designing a layout of the app. And on the screen here, you can see there's an example that was created in Canva that they could use. Canva is excellent for graphic images. Another idea is your students could create a 3D prototype with a diagram. And I screenshotted a picture of an example using Tinkercad, which does 3D prototypes, and they could create their own labels for it. And I particularly love Tinkercad because it's educator friendly. A teacher can create a class and you can add your students in and they can work simultaneously and collaboratively in Tinkercad, and you can monitor their progress while they're in it. And then last but not least, another idea is they could design a website, that addresses their solution. And of course, they're not limited to these virtual solutions. There's plenty of other ideas that they can come up with. And some may even want to try to, tackle building something. But either way, like I said, we know that, this is just a unique time in our world. So we just wanted to share with you some examples of virtual solutions that your children could be thinking about. Now, Packful, of course, is a design thinking curriculum. And so there are many different models out there. So we just wanted to share this with you. I particularly like sharing this because it was created by one of our Packful teachers last year. And of course, we tweaked it a little bit, but still, it's great. Stephen Cerruti is the teacher who did it from out here in San Diego, E3 Civic High. But he took the time to just do a comparative grid matrix of some of the different models out there. And if you notice, Project Invent is on there as well. And our speaker, who will be with us shortly, is actually the co-founder of Project Invent. It's also important to note that Packful has been aligned to the next generation science standards. It has also been aligned to the Digital Promise Challenge Map and ISTE standards as well. So for those of you, of course, all of you are considering using Packful with your students, but it's just helpful to know that, that it does align to science and technology standards, lots of other standards as well, but this is our start. So we'll continue to work on alignment that could be useful and helpful to you. At this time, Monty is going to take the lead in doing a Pactful demonstration for you, so I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you. Can you see that?
Yes.
And does it look okay?
Yes, it does.
Okay. I always want to make sure because you never know when you're sharing screens online. So this has come up a few times, and I thought maybe a quick little demo for those of you who have or new to this, or even frankly for those who may have had some experience. There's a couple nuances that might be helpful, so I just wanted to kind of point them out. So from the Pactful.org website, that's what we call our public site. You can go and I'm going to start with showing you, because I think many of you have already created your own teacher account in the Packful app, but I know a couple of you have not. So if you have not, the way to go how to get an account in Packful itself is to go up here to, there's lots of ways, but this is one of the easiest. Go up here to the sign in option and say create account teacher. This will take you to the page where you can fill in some information about your school, grade levels of your students, etc. And then you can click sign up with Google. And you'll need a Google account in order to do this. We've talked about that before. If you have a G Suite for Education account that your district provides, that's ideal. If you don't, I know some of you are using personal Google accounts, and that's okay too. Any Google account will work. But once you fill out this form, and I can't do it because I already have an account, what will happen is that you'll receive an email with information, and you'll automatically be taken into the Packful app. And so I'm going to go ahead and go up here to sign in. And by the way, I'll point out here, because it'll be helpful later, this is also the place that once your students have your class code, they can go right here to the create account student with class code. They'll go through a very similar process, except we don't ask them all those questions. We simply ask them your class code. And then they sign up with Google and are attached to your class inside of Packful. So that's right up here on in the sign in options. So once you have your account and are signed in, you can just click sign in, and I'm going to click sign in again. In my case, I don't get any more prompts because I've already done this before. you're taken to what we call the dashboard. And on your dashboard, you will each be given the class name that you provided for Packful, and then a class code. This code is unique to your class, and obviously you could all see my code and potentially could join my class. I would ask you not to do that. Please use your own class code. But here's the class code. It's this class code that you provide to your students. It'll be a 4-character code you provide to your students, and that's all they need in order to join your class in Packful. So from here, a great place to get started, we've talked about it many times, is the Innovator's Guide. We actually, when you're a first-time user in Packful, we kind of draw you to the Innovator's Guide. This gets you through some content and light curricular content and information, including information about Packful, information about social good innovation, the global goals. This is a great place for students, for you and students to start. There's not a ton here, but it'll give them a little introduction to the overall experience. And we'll talk about how Packful works. And so you can see here the flow or the design thinking, the 3 design thinking phases that we use in Packful, followed by the pitch. You'll see this repeated throughout. And then students can explore the global goals, learn more details about them. And then here's the resources tab, which has additional resources, including the teacher's guide down here at the bottom. So it's always right here available to you, and you can pop this open, take a peek. This is a pretty long document, so I'm not going to go through it now, but it is in the, again, it's in the Innovator's Guide under resources. So back to my dashboard. This is the key piece, and so some of you, when students come in to get started, they're really, after they've gone through the Innovator's Guide, they're invited to basically create a project. So they click on create a project, they're asked to identify a global goal. Again, I said before, this can be changed at any point, so they can just pick one that sort of feels the closest to what they're thinking at the time. And then later on, as their project, their idea changes, they can change the goal if they decide to, or they can change the name or anything that they like. And so for today, as an example, I'm just going to choose clean water and sanitation. I'm going to give my team a fun name as we're the water bringers. And I'm going to add other people from my team to join. And so in this, what happens here is that I can add, any student can add any other student who's in your class into their team. And so this is that self-autonomy a little bit thing. If you're running any problems, let us know. We can help you organize or do something if there's any issues. But they can add or remove any other students from your class. But they have to exist in your Packful class in order for them to add them first. So you have to think through those logistics. In this case, I have the other me, my personal account, so I just added that person. There's no one else in my demo class. And then go down and create a project name and then a description. This is optional, but we're going to start using these more. So we might have a project. We are going to bring clean, I can't spell today, water to everyone in my community. They can create a project name now or change it, do whatever they like, get started. So that's all they need to get started, and then takes them right into what we usually call the project landing page. And this is really the key place where they can then get started. And I know this question comes up where people are saying, how do I get to the curriculum? You have to do so under the context of a project. So you create a project, and then you can access any of these 4 sections in order to move forward through the curriculum. And you can access them anytime that you like. And so we'll start with the understand phase, because that's what we're talking about today. And this starts the explore, do, doc steps for each of the phases. You'll see those repeated throughout. The explore has some curricular content, some videos that we've custom created to kind of talk about what the phase means, give them some overview of what they're about to do. And then under the do step are all of the activities. And so in each phase, and we'll talk about understand today, we've actually suggested that they complete between 3 and 5 activities that are most meaningful to them. As the teacher, you may tell them specifically which ones you want them to do and in which order, or you can leave it up to them to kind of figure out. The meat of the learning kind of happens while they're working on these activities, right? So these activities, as they expand them, they're different. Each one is a little bit different, gives you maybe some information. In some cases, there's a template that they have to complete. Et cetera, et cetera. When they're ready, I go to the document tab, and in the document tab, they link files from their Google Drive. So in this case, I'm going to link some files, just some gibberish files in this case. These will probably be Google Docs that have the results of their activity. They could be pictures or videos if that's the result of their activity. Whatever you've asked them to do is sort of any evidence or support for this particular phase. They can add multiple files here, and when they're ready, they can submit them to the teacher for review. Anyone on the team can link files, and anyone on the team can submit it for review to the teacher. Once they've sent it off to the teacher, in this case, I'm both the teacher, I'm kind of faking it, it's my teacher account. The teacher then, and I'm a teacher in this case, gets the ready for review tab, and it will show them, it'll show you, hey, this is one of the submissions that you need to look at. You've received one, and you get to see the documents. Because they're Google Docs, you may decide to make comments directly in the Google Docs, but ultimately the phase, you have to decide whether you're going to return it to the team or approve the phase. So you can return to the team and say, great start, but please, complete activity, 7. And it's not a, bad thing. It's just a feedback loop. And then it goes back to the team, and then they see your comments, and you've encouraged them to work on some more and send it back. Or you can mark it as approved, and they're encouraged to move on to another phase. So from the student's perspective, they get to see, you can see this project here. This is their project. They'll have a call to action. You don't see it because I just did it as the teacher. They'll have a call to action, a little red dot that tells them there's something from the teacher. They can click on that. Here's a red dot right here. You can see the red dot. They can see that it was returned. You can go to the document step and see what happened. So all of the back and forth that happens in the comments from teacher is here for you in the document step of each of the phases.
Connie, we have quite a few questions coming in.
And I can't see the questions because it shrunk my screen, so let me see how I can see that.
I can share them with you. The first one is from Alyssa. She asks, is it possible to have co-teachers in Packful? That's
a great question. So the answer is yes. And if you have special circumstances that you want me to help you with, feel free to create a post in the support group on the community website, and we can help you with that. But yes, by default, obviously each teacher gets a class in Packful. They invite their students in, and it's sort of an enclosed loop. But if you would like other teachers to also be in your class, I can set that up for you on the back end. If you just let me know what their email address is and what your class code is. Actually, I don't need your class code to be published online because everyone could see that. So if you just tell me what their email address is, I can find that class code and drop them into your class, and then they'll have access to your class. There is a frequently asked question in the community site too about multiple classes. There may be some of you that either have been in Packful before or are helping multiple other teachers, and there is a way to have multiple classes, and you want to look at that frequently asked question to make sure you understand how the flow works. But basically there becomes a drop down on your dashboard that allows you to choose between the classes. And then effectively any co-teacher they'll see the same ready for review indicator from students, and any one of them can make a comment and send the stuff back. We track on the back who's done that, but we don't really disclose that to the student team. So it'll just say teacher feedback. They won't know exactly which one.
There's a question from Daniel asking about setting up the projects. Does one student set up the project on behalf of the team, or and invite the other team members, or do they all sign up?
So what we encourage is that all the students would sign up and sign into Packful. Any one of them, or presumably they would decide, any one of them can create the project and then add the other students from the team into that project. And then once they're associated with the project, any one of them can make modifications to the project, link documents, and or submit phases. So it's up to you as to how you want to do that. But the best scenario is really invite them all into Packful, then they're available to be added to each of a project, and then they can help each other. So we're really supporting that team concept. And we'd also encourage you to think about, clever, fun team names. The whole idea here is to give it a little spirit. The names and the words you use in Packful can actually, we do support emojis. So they can go to town in there. Hopefully we don't have anything bad, but even if there was something bad as the teacher, you can adjust it. So you can click on any of the projects. Up here at the top of the project is this little edit icon. You can edit as the teacher, make any changes to the name or team members, change the goal, etc. Speaking of which, one last thing, in the event that and I'll just create a quick little sample project. This is a test. If you create a project that does not have any progress, which means there has been no files have been attached or phases have been submitted, when you go to the edit page, you can delete that project. So there's a delete button down here. That only appears for projects that don't have any, demonstrable work associated with them. If you find that you have a project that you created that does have work associated with it and you need it deleted, just create a message and I can take care of that for you pretty quickly. So I'm going to delete this one as an example. Daniel asked me a separate question about the co-teacher, but I can handle that offline. But yeah, I think we kind of addressed that. That's the big key. So if you don't have a teacher account, go to the website, fill out the form. You can get one right away. Then you'll have your own custom class code. You can send an email. Frankly, you can forward the email. You'll get an automatic email from the system. You can forward that email to your students or post it on your class page, whatever works best for you. They just need that class code in order to join and be associated with your Packful class. Looking at some questions, Daniel, is there a limit to how many projects can be submitted? No, there are no limits. And in fact, if students start a project and ultimately decide to abandon and regroup with other people, that's totally okay. They can just create a new project and potentially abandon the one that they started. There's no limit there. But probably, for their first time, my suspicion is that they start on one and they probably see something like that to fruition. But that's what we supported, kind of looking in all different directions. There are no limits to the number of students who could be on a team, at least from the app's perspective. We've kind of talked about the sweet spot of 2 to 6 students, but there's no limits that are built into the app itself.
Okay, awesome. Well, tonight we will be talking about the understand phase. And just in keeping with the time, I'm not sure if we'll have some time to do the activity because I did want to take a moment to go into the actual Packful activities. So I want to make sure we have time to do that and before our guest speaker comes in. So in the understand phase, students, it's their opportunity to really dive into the research by learning how to empathize with people being affected by the problem. It's also a time where they can gather stories, important details, facts, and they can gather those through either observations and interviews. This is also a key time where they really learn how to avoid making assumptions about, about their problem, and they really learn how to be objective. It's easy to analyze situations through our own personal experiences, but it takes a special skill to be objective. And so it really helps them to learn the complexity of the problems that they're trying to research. Within Packful, the activities are organized into 3 categories: research, empathy, and organization. And I wanted to take a moment to just go through some of those activities with you. As Monty shared with you, you can do, we recommend that you do 3 to 5. However, with timing, you may find yourself, maybe having to do less, or you may have time to do more. But it is really your discretion as the teacher. We trust your judgment. So the next activity in the research portion is dive into the research questions. And it's important to note that all of the activities have digital templates for your students to use in Google Drive, or we recommend a digital tool that they can use to work collaboratively since most of them are working remotely. But within this particular activity, students will create research questions with their team using this template. And this graphic organizer provides examples of the different types of research questions that they can ask, and also a list of online databases that they can access to find more information about their global goal. The next activity, uncover assumptions, personal assumptions charts, is an opportunity for students to just uncover any personal assumptions that they may have. It's also an opportunity for them to identify what they already know and then what they still need or want to know about it. And then this next activity is actually a new one that we've added because it falls in line with our overall mission. And it's important for students when you're talking about the complexity of problems to know it's addressing disparities and understanding differences. So within this activity, students will recognize how people of particular races, particular geographical regions, people of different genders, and also socioeconomic classes are being affected by a particular issue. And it's important for them to know this information to understand the full scope of the problem. And this particular activity is really important because if you take a peek in the future at the pitch rubric, this is also one of the criteria. So it's really important that they take a moment to research, look out for any shocking statistics, any major contrast that may be happening with certain communities. The next category of activities under understand is empathy. And within this activity, create an interview script, it actually teaches students how to go through the process of creating a script that can be used to ask interviewees or people who are being directly affected by the problem. It's also an opportunity for them to learn how to build rapport, identify big picture questions, and even specific details about their problem. The next activity, conduct interviews, allows students to find key people who are involved with the problem, whether they're being directly affected by it or whether they are a professional who is currently addressing it, or maybe even a person who has actually just observed it. But it's a good way to gather information from those people. And then the final empathy activity is conduct observations. And within this particular activity, a digital what, how, and why table is provided. And so that students can observe what the person is doing, how they are doing it, or why they might be doing it that way. And then the actual activity that we were going to do, and I'm going to post it in the community because I would still like for you all to try to do it. It gives you an example of how you can, with your students, make observations like in a photograph, because we know that like in this time, students may not be able to interact with a whole lot of people just because it's just not safe. So they may be pulling their data from video clips, newspaper articles, photographs, that are out there. And so being able to still make observations from information like that. And so, feel free to take that activity and use it with your students, but it's a nice way to introduce them to it. So basically within the activity, there's a picture presented and there's a series of questions on a Jamboard that you have to make observations and address it. So like I said, I'll follow up and post it so you still get that experience and you can use it in your classroom. The next set of activities under understand is organization, which is so important. I think we all at some point need extra help on that, and even still do, even to this day. The first activity is affinity clusters, in which students are able to record their reflections on some of the previous activities that they've done within the phase. And they can do this through digital sticky notes like Jamboard, or even Padlet is an excellent one. Both are free. And then this is an opportunity where they can just really highlight what stands out to them, whether it was a great quote or a thought-provoking question, or maybe even a certain behavior. Then they take those reflections and then organize them into similarities and differences to help gain insight. And on the screen here, you can see these are some examples of some student work from our last challenge last year. This is, of course, when school was open prior to COVID. They were able to actually create poster boards of their affinity clusters. However, this is still possible, just in a digital form. So we do try to provide tech tips or graphic organizers that your students can use to still accomplish these goals. The next one is creating an empathy map. An empathy map is basically where your students are able to really just identify like key findings in a quadrant, a table that's labeled said, did, thought, and felt. And basically they can record just significant moments that developed from their interview or observation. This particular activity is fascinating and important because it introduces Maslow's hierarchy of needs to students. And then finally, Organize Your Findings Journey Map is a detailed digital timeline that reflects the day of an impacted person of this particular problem. And so students, again, it helps them to uncover any assumptions, if they have additional questions that they have to ask, or maybe even identify gaps within a person's day. All of that is important when you are seeking to understand a problem. At this time, has Connie joined us?
She has. They're no fault of
Awesome.
ours for not sharing the link with her sooner. You'll have to upgrade her to a host because I can't.
Definitely will do that. I'm going to take a moment to introduce her and then I'll make sure that happens. Well, we are so happy to have with us Connie Liu, who is an engineer turned teacher turned entrepreneur. She is recognized by Forbes 30 Under 30 in education and runs Project Invent, as I mentioned earlier. She was one of the design thinking models that we compared Packful to. And even some of our curriculum pieces from Packful have been adopted. A lot of it has been adopted from Project Invent. And basically, Project Invent helps to inspire high school students nationwide to invent technologies that make a difference. She herself is an inventor and a creative, she has created assistive technologies to empower those with disabilities, which is wonderful. She graduated from MIT in mechanical engineering. So that's just a little bit of background. I'm sure she has probably a lot of other great accomplishments and achievements, but we're just so happy to have you with us, Connie. So I'm gonna make sure that you have the capabilities to share your screen, and then I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect.
I just have to interject and say, Connie's been along with us really since the inception of this this Packful endeavor. Has been a great advocate and supporter, and so it's great to have amazing long-term partners like Connie. And so we're so excited to have her here today. So.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to share, especially for this stage. Understand is definitely my favorite phase of design thinking. So I'm excited to share a little bit more about experiences in the classroom and especially the virtual classroom and how you can make sure to catalyze your students to really take advantage of this time where they can really be growing their empathy and creative thinking. All right, I'm gonna just go ahead and share screen. Can everyone see my screen? If you can give a quick thumbs up.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. All right, Alina already did such a great job with introducing me, but hello, I'm Connie. I'm the founder and executive director of a nonprofit called Project Invent. We are a national nonprofit. We work with high schools across the country, getting students inventing technologies for social good. A lot of the ways we do that is through a very, very similar process to what you're doing with Pactful. So all these phases that you see in the Pactful app are the exact same phases that we see our students do. So they go through that understand phase. They sit down with real users and learn about what challenges they face. They take all of that information, synthesize it, organize it, and then come up with ideas to tackle those problems. Then they prototype those ideas, take out the cardboard, the pipe cleaners, the tape, and then make prototypes out of what they want to build. Then we teach them the technology skills to actually build those inventions, and then they're pitching their idea at the end of the day. And for Project Invent, that means we host a big demo day where students get to pitch to investors and tech executives from Silicon Valley to get real investment in their products. So the core of understand, and the part that sometimes feels the most daunting but is the most important, is that understand needs to happen through real world connections. So what that means is that students need to be talking to real people, not just thinking about a problem conceptually, but talking to real people who are affected by it. So that's people like Jimmy, who's blind, or Jose, who is a classmate of one of our teams in Washington who has cerebral palsy. Or it could be like people like Abigail. She's a community member who uses a wheelchair, but is still a practicing artist. And sometimes her arthritis gets in the way of her practicing her art. These are the people who encourage the students to be able to come up with the ideas that they eventually build, invent, and get empowered by to continue innovating for the world. And these community partners are so, so core, and I really want to emphasize this. This is one of the quotes from our teacher who's been running Project Invent during this really crazy COVID era when a lot of the learning is virtual. And she said, I really felt like I was losing some of my students. They weren't engaging in the same way. Then we had them talk to their community partner again. It gave them back their why. And that's a really core part of why community partners in this understand phase matters so much. It gives your students the why of why are they solving a problem and why do they try in school. So I want to also share with you a little clip of an interview that we often start a lot of our first meetings with students and with training teachers of Jimmy. We met Jimmy earlier in the slides. He's blind and he works with actually a lot of our student teams, sharing his story about being blind and what challenges he faces. So I'm just going to show a 1-minute clip of him speaking to me about some of the challenges he faces. And I want you to be looking out for things that surprise you. And remember, we're just listening to 1 or 2 minutes of this clip. And I'm going to believe that there's going to be some things even in that small segment that are going to surprise you and that are going to be learning moments for you. So let's see if this. So Jimmy, could you introduce yourself?
Hi all, my name is Jimmy Harriet, and I am getting a little older, just turned 30, so it's the start to a new life, I guess, and been back at work as a blind technician for working for an airline. And it's a whole new world with a whole bunch of new challenges to overcome, but I'm very thankful.
Okay, and then can you walk me through a day in your life? What do you do? What are some of the challenges you face?
Well, any regular day challenges, I'm very thankful and blessed to have family around. But it's random little things as far as getting food and whatnot. Yes, there's applications on phones to get food for the blind, Instacart and whatnot. But I do rely a lot on my parents, and that's one of my challenges is try to overcome that and try to do things on my own. Okay. Yeah.
So let's try starting from the moment you wake up till when you go to bed. Walk me through kind of like what you do throughout the day.
Yeah. Well, I wake up usually to the sound, depending on the time of year, because I have no vision at all. I don't know if it's dark out, if it's light out. So usually you hear birds chirping when the sun is coming up, right? So in my head I know that it's daylight. Then I also check my phone and it'll tell me what time it is. I'll then go and take a shower, brush my teeth, fumble through a bunch of toothbrushes to find which one's mine. And I go, brush my teeth and try not to slip in the shower. Try not to have the shower gel fall on my foot because I placed it halfway on the... You realize how much you use your vision for after you've lost it and you take it for granted. Then I'll start off the day, call friends. I use Lyft, Uber, another good benefit of technology, but I've had Lyft drivers drop me off at wrong locations. I've had to find my way out of those things, but technology again helps.
We're not going to listen to the full clip because I know I strapped on time, but just wanted you guys to hear a little bit of the richness that's captured by just doing something as simple as interviewing someone. I want to see if we can make this a little interactive. If maybe 2 volunteers, what was one thing that surprised you when you're listening to that interview? And you can go ahead and unmute yourself and then shout it out. Or if it's happening in the chat, if someone else can check for me.
Certainly, what struck me, this is Inez Odom, what really struck me was his talking about really just activities of daily living and needing support with those things, and recognizing that something as simple as seemingly, if you have sight as a jar falling off a shelf during the shower, can really derail your entire day, and how all of us at times are rushing and trying to get to where we have to go, and then you know, that how just quantumly everything is made more challenging.
Thank you for sharing, Inez. That's so very true. I love how you captured that.
I'll comment in the chat. The other Monty, which is really funny, said, "I never imagined the problem of grocery shopping for the blind. Neither product boxes nor fruits and vegetables have Braille."
Yeah. Thank
and
you.
Tracy said, "There is a challenge with every act, even locating your own toothbrush."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the toothbrush story is always a shocker to people. The fact that he's a blind technician for an airline, I think sometimes shocks people as well. And remember, all of that was baked into 2 minutes. So imagine how life-changing 2 minutes can be for your students of talking to someone who faces a challenge, rather than just thinking about, okay, what problems do I think blind people face? There's something very rich about that human connection that is always very key to great design thinking and understanding. So through that, for Project and Invent, a lot of our students choose all types of problems that they're excited about solving. Some of them choose trying to build video games for people with disabilities to improve access to entertainment. Some of them choose to help people in wheelchairs be able to shop better. Or they notice that there's a lot of drowsy drivers on the road, which is just as dangerous as drunk driving. So they work on, how do I gamify driving and staying up to make sure that people are not falling asleep at the wheel. Or they're making sure that football players on their own football team are not getting concussions so they can still get to school. These are the type of problems that are driven by student passion that are so key to really tapping into student excitement, especially during a time when they're getting Zoom fatigue and just getting tired of a lot of the learning that just feels so normal. Giving them the agency to choose a problem to solve and get the chance to solve it is so powerful. So in your work, you're having your students choose from a whole array of problems, and all of these can have different community partners that you can connect with, oftentimes just in your own community as well. Usually for Project Invent, people find their community partner by just asking in their immediate network, hey, is there anyone you know who is working on clean energy? Or hey, is there anyone you know that works in a food bank that we can talk to? These are people that are right in your networks but might be hidden to you now, but by just reaching out to people in your immediate network, you should be able to find those connections to make with your students, and even a 30-minute interview can be so powerful for them. Sometimes it gets challenging with virtual learning as well. So at least for Project Invent, we've been taking advantage of a few different virtual tools. I'll mention 3 of our most popular ones. The first one, obviously Zoom. All of our students are doing virtual breakout rooms and able to work on teams because they're being brought together through video chat. We have them show their understanding by making little Flipgrid videos of their prototype. So even if we're not in the same classroom and I can't hold their cardboard prototype, they can show it to me through Flipgrid. And then we love Mural, which is a virtual whiteboard. Everything Alina was showing for the understand and the organize phase with all the sticky notes. We showed pictures of physical sticky notes, but you can do the same exact thing, if not even better, on Mural, because it preserves it forever. Whereas when you're doing sticky notes in person, you put them up, then you have no idea what to do with it after, so you throw them all away. This is one of the mural boards that we used for every single step of the process. Actually, you can just zoom into whichever step you're working on and then put sticky notes up and then organize them however you want. So we're a really big fan of virtual whiteboards at Project Invent because they're making design thinking and creative problem solving possible in the virtual world. So my segment's pretty short. I just want to end with giving a quick shout out for other ways you can continue to be involved in addition to Pactful, thinking about how you can continue to engage your students in invention and design thinking, and how you can continue to engage as an educator in improving your practice as an innovative educator. You can sign up for our newsletter. We have a free curriculum you can download online and a whole library of free resources for COVID-19 design challenges or little videos you can use. You can apply for our fellowship. One of the participants on here, Jennifer Ogo, is part of that fellowship, and would love to see some of your names in there again for this year. It's a year-long fellowship that starts with a week-long training, then goes for a full year of running a invention program that culminates in a demo day. And we host professional development workshops and different things throughout that whole process. And then we're hosting workshops throughout this virtual time. So in early February, we'll be doing a webinar about making and coding virtually with Arduino through a lens of designing for social good. So very excited to be hosting that and would love to see some of you engaging in different ways in whatever makes sense to you with Project Invent. Awesome, so that's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for having me, and hopefully this gave you a little dose of what the understand phase can look like for you and your students in this virtual world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like I said before, Connie's been such a great supporter and friend of ours, so I really appreciate you taking time to meet. And I would encourage any of you to go check out the Project Invent stuff. And frankly, throughout a lot of the Packful curriculum, as Alina mentioned, you'll see lots of little references to this was stolen, only stolen with permission, from Project Invent. And we've got to, we're all in the same group, kind of helping each other. We're short on time, but I wanted to kind of, especially as you're getting ready to meet with students and talk about, why they might want to be energized or excited. There are go back to the prize for just a second. There are prizes to be had here. When we finally get to the video pitch submissions and the final step, we will be selecting 5 winning teams and be giving away prizes to them. They'll have the opportunity to select which charity will win the prize amount. So we tweaked it a little bit this year, so the prizes will go to charity, and hopefully that aligns really well with our social good innovation mission and opportunities. But there is something besides just the intrinsic reward of building and creating something awesome to be had here. And then next slide, the last thing we want to mention, throughout the process, we would like to encourage you and or your students to share their progress and the work that they're doing on social media and or the Packful community. We're going to be giving away $25 Storyteller Award. The idea here is really just to celebrate each other's success and the work that's happening and encourage participation. So as we'd like to see videos or pictures or even anecdotes, whatever the work's doing, we saw some great things emerge last year. We had student teams that were making their own Twitter accounts and creating their own assets and stuff. And so we found this to be a great way to kind of share share the information that's happening. Use hashtag JTIC21. It's in the upper right corner of all the slides. You'll see it here. You'll see me reuse it in all my emails. That's all intentional. We're just trying to get the word out. And we're going to give awards to those of you who share some of the exciting work that you're doing. And with that, I think we've packed in a lot and did not have as much time for questions as we hoped, but we're going to open it up the floor for questions and comments now. If you have to take off, that's okay. If you want to stay around, at least our team will stay here for the duration and answer as many questions as we can. But also, if you're able to answer or address questions with each other, that's great too. So with that, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away or type in the chat, whatever works best for you. And then the last thing I will mention, though, on an ongoing basis, try to remember to engage with each other on the Packful community. There's a community link at the top of every page. that's the place we're trying to hopefully get. If you've got questions or support that way, it's not just one person asking me, and other people can benefit from the answers and the support.
Monty, I was going to say there was a suggestion by Carl in the chat. He's mentioned that Adobe Spark is free for students as well. It has posts, pages, and videos. And thank you for sharing that. And I would love to just like to encourage everyone to participate in, any or share any resources that you have in the Packful community. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to share some resources that can help you in regards to virtual solutions, but feel free to add on to that post and any resources. That's one thing that's really great about this challenge is that, it's full of educators, and I know everyone has brilliant ideas and you're doing brilliant things already in your classroom. So please share those resources in the community. We'd love to see them.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, we have answers for a lot of things, but honestly, we're not the experts. The collective group is the experts, and this is a community, and it goes beyond just those of us here today. So you all have great things that are working well in your classrooms, and I know I get a lot of those questions too, but that's the other reason why we're trying to push that to the community so everyone can benefit. If you have questions, feel free to unmute your mic or comments or anything that we could make more clear.
I like that, Carl. Smartest person in the room is the room. My favorite place to be was like amongst my fellow educators, because there's so much knowledge in the room. And I remember one time I went to a conference and they had this invited speaker, and by the time the session was over, I want to say collectively, all of the educators in the room already knew the information. And so I was thinking they could have saved some money just because if we just talked amongst each other, we would have had all of this anyway. So I always get excited whether it's in a virtual space or in an actual physical space with other educators, just because there's so much information there.
Yeah, so I'd love to know, I mean, if any of you, are you starting soon with students, or have you been waiting for this? I know some people have actually already started. I'm just curious where everyone is, if anyone wanted to share.
Hi, this is Carl. Yeah, my team, I've been kind of leading up with the SDGs is in STEAM, and so that's a class I teach with 8th grade students, and so we've been doing a lot of kind of foundational building about SDGs, and then I gave the students a kind of a challenge to figure out what challenge they would, or what SDG they would like to work on, and then we formed teams based upon that. And so now we're going to just kind of start into the research and project. And I was not sure really what happens once you do that creative project. So it was really great to see how that works through, because I wasn't sure how much lifting I was going to have to do.
Gotcha.
So thanks.
Sure. I know that one piece, and by the way, this is the kind of feedback we're ultimately looking for too. We kind of, it helps us make improvements to the curriculum and the platform. And I have gotten that feedback. We're just trying to figure out the right way to kind of really do that, which is, I know there's that confusing piece is, if you don't first create a project, it's not clear how you get access to the activities in the curriculum. So that's why I wanted to make sure we covered that today.
It's kind of like the Matrix.
It is.
Right?
Oh, great. That's great, Daniel. And Kathy, that's fantastic. Yeah, and like I said, Connie mentioned the empathy. Empathy and define are the, traditional terms that come from the Stanford model of design thinking. We kind of brought them together and changed that to understand, just, in some ways to simplify for our teenage audience. All right, with that, I'm going to stop recording, but I'm going to keep, you are welcome to hang out with us and continue to ask or answer any questions or talk to each other, whatever works best. This is an open forum for everyone.